Sometimes prequels are better? Here's my spoiler-free review of Pet Sematary Bloodlines. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Dave Musson, at Dave Musson on Instagram, and this is a place where I talk to you about all things Stephen King. And at the moment I am in the midst of going through the Stephen King movies and TV shows that have been adapted from his work. So I was very excited that a new Stephen King sort of movie got released last week, Pet Sematary Bloodlines, the prequel to the 2019 remake of Pet Sematary, which is available for streaming right now on Paramount+. So I thought, what the heck, let's lay down a spoiler-free review. I watched it last night at the time of recording. Might as well see if we can get some extra traffic onto these pages who may be interested in finding out more about Pet Sematary Bloodlines. So that's what I'm going to do in this video. I'm going to give you my spoiler-free review of it, and then I'll let you carry on with your lives. Before we get into the review, a quick mention of things that I would like to plug. Everything is in the description. You can find links to my newsletter, to the Constant Writers podcast, to my fiction, to my Stephen King quiz book, and to my Letterboxd profile. Any support, much appreciated. But more than anything, I'm just happy that you're here watching this video. So let's have a think about how we're going to do this, shall we? So my plan for this review is to give a quick overview, synopsis of the film, and a reminder of where you can find it, which is Paramount+. And then basically I'll cover what I liked, what I didn't like, give some final thoughts, and then do a quick bit at the end where I point out any links among the cast, crew, and events on screen to other Stephen King adaptations. That's the only bit where there might be a potential tiny spoiler, but even then I don't think it will spoil too much. You'll probably be expecting what I'm about to say. So let's get on with it. And if/when you watch Pet Sematary Bloodlines, well, come and let me know what you think in the comments or over on Instagram where I'm at Dave Musson. Okay, time to start. Here's my spoiler-free review of Pet Sematary Bloodlines. So, death is different here. That's the tagline for this one. And the premise is a pretty simple one. It's a prequel to Pet Sematary, but it's a prequel to the 2019 remake of Pet Sematary, which means a few things have been rejigged. Let me explain. The story here is essentially based on those few pages in the novel of Pet Sematary where we get the story of Timmy Bateman, a human who was buried in the Pet Sematary, came back from the war, Second World War. Father didn't deal well with the grief of losing his child, so buried him in the Pet Sematary, the one beyond the deadfall, and Timmy came back and, well, carnage happened. That's the story we get here, but the timelines have been adjusted. So Timmy has come back dead from the Vietnam War, and this story is set in 1969, 50 years before the events of the 2019 remake. And our main focus is on a young Judd Crandall with his, in this story, girlfriend Norma, and they are planning to leave Ludlow. They're desperate to leave Ludlow to get out to join the Peace Corps. But then they realise what's going on with Timmy, and they find out some other things about, well, the Crandalls and how they're linked to Ludlow. And yeah, they end up staying, fighting zombies, and all of those kind of stuff. That's basically the premise for this movie. It's a very simple one. It's dealing with that Timmy Bateman story and the people behind this film, Lindsey Beer in particular, making her directorial debut, just getting creative with those few pages and trying to flesh it out into a movie. So, as I've already mentioned, you can stream this on Paramount+. It's the only place you can find it. It's a Paramount+ original film. It's not going to be in cinemas. It's just gone straight to streaming, which is a bit of a shame because, actually, slight spoiler for my final thoughts, but I preferred this to The Boogeyman, which was out in cinemas earlier this year. I even probably prefer this to the actual 2019 remake, which this is the prequel for, but I'll come to that in a little later. To start with, because I like to keep these things positive, I like to go into these things hoping for the best. Let's start with some things that I did enjoy in this movie. The thing I enjoyed the most was Ludlow. It felt very Kingian, and by that I mean it felt like a place that you would not want to stay at all. It felt like a horrible, evil, twisted little town, and I think that was captured really well in the film. Like I say, it felt like a very Stephen King town. You could see why Judd and Norma wanted to leave, and their friend Manny also wanted to leave, and Manny's sister Donna also wanted to leave, and you get a sense of its dark secrets that are at the underbelly of this town. Even Judd's parents are desperate for him to get out, much as they love him. So the feel of the town, the vibe of the town, that was really well done. In fact, it's interesting talking about the town because we get a little bit of the town history in this film from the 1600s, and we learn that Ludlow was actually named deliberately in a way so that the founding fathers of the town would never forget their sins. I'm not going to go into any more detail than that, just watch the film, but that kind of sets the tone for the town, right? It's named because the people who found it fucked up, essentially, and they wanted that mistake permanently etched into the name of the town. So yeah, it really does set a base level atmosphere for Ludlow, and that base level atmosphere is, I would like to leave now, please. A few other positives to mention, starting with the cast. This is a decent cast, and there are some big names in here that you will have heard of and who play in a good shift, namely Henry Thomas, David Duchovny, and Pam Grier. They're all standouts for me, and they all feel like very well-rounded, lived-in residents of Ludlow. They look tired, they look haunted, they look scared, and they want to help people get out. And in some cases, they look desperate as well. And I think that does really fit in with the vibe of this story. And if we're talking cast, I mean, we've got to talk about how hot some of the cast are. It's interesting seeing this story with a young Judd and Norma, because in my head, people called Judd and Norma are not young and are not hot. Who does that change here? So, introduce yourselves, if you haven't already, to Jackson White as Judd, who is an absolute hunk, and Natalie Alyn Lind as Norma, who is just stunning. And don't forget also to introduce yourself to Donna, played by Isabella star LaBlanc, also stunningly beautiful. And yeah, just ridiculously hot cast. And I'm all here for it. Absolutely. Yes, please. While we're talking on the cast as well, there's a dog called Hendrix. Great name. I used to have a guinea pig called Hendrix. He was a legend. This dog is also probably a legend, but unfortunately got buried in the Pet Sematary. So he's more like my dog Floyd. Bit of a dick. Another positive of this, at least to some extent, was how they lent into the fact that when somebody is buried in the Pet Sematary and comes back, they seem to know everything. And they're a real dick about it. Timmy in particular has all of this unbelievable knowledge about people. But this is one of the first flaws I found with this, that it didn't really lean into it as much as it could. It didn't make as much of that as it could, because that's kind of the unique feature of this particular zombie. Yeah, sure, they're back from the dead. Yeah, sure, they might be eating people and all that kind of stuff. But what other zombies come back and know all of your deepest and darkest secrets? Only in Pet Sematary. So they needed to go a bit harder on that for me, really. Now, as I was watching this, something I realised that I was enjoying was that it was tiptoeing towards trying to align itself with the same sort of vibe and energy of Pet Sematary 2, which is a batshit crazy sequel to the original movie that I really like. And at those moments where it felt like a distant cousin of Pet Sematary 2, that's where I thought this one probably was at its best. Where it's just that little bit unhinged, just being a bit carefree, having fun with it, leaning into the gore, leaning into the scariness. Yeah, that was good. Again, like with the all-knowing zombies, it didn't quite go all the way, which is a shame, but I appreciated it when it tried nonetheless. A couple of other quick things I liked. Timmy Bateman was creepy. There's a scene in particular where he's underwater that genuinely gave me a bit of a chill, a bit of a shudder. Yeah, good job there. He did a sterling job of being a creepy undead person. And lastly, the thing I really did like about this is that there was no shoehorning of any sort of trauma narrative just rammed into this script, as we're seeing a lot in horror at the moment, and as we saw in particular in The Boogeyman early this year. No, this was just a Pet Sematary prequel. It's a creepy burial ground. The ground's sour. It fucks things up. Don't bury people there. Don't worry about all that trauma stuff. Just let it go. Let's just have this little visit back to Ludlow. So I appreciated this movie in particular for that. Moving on to things that I perhaps didn't like, there wasn't much here. I should stress I did not hate this at all. I went into it with very, very low bar and came out pleasantly surprised. There were a couple of things that I would count as a negative though. First of all, much as I love the town and the vibe of the town, to me that did not look like Maine at all. And the accents of the characters did not sound like Maine accents. And that is a key selling point of Ludlow and Maine. So that felt like a missed opportunity. I don't know, I might be wrong. Maine might look like that. If there's anyone out there watching from Maine who wants to correct me, please do. But to me, it looked, I don't know, it looked like somewhere more towards the middle and probably further down than Maine. I don't know American geography that well, but let's just say Maine's New England. That didn't look like somewhere that would look like New England, to me at least. And like I say, the accents were all wrong. Judd's accent was not the accent that Judd needs to be speaking in. But anyway, minor grievance. My main problem was just that this whole thing felt a bit thin, felt a bit too light touch, a bit too lightweight. I already mentioned the all-knowing zombies, they didn't go hard enough. The Pet Sematary 2 vibes, they didn't go hard enough. The hot Judd and hot Norma, they didn't give us enough of that. The whole thing just felt a little bit like, here's a signal, we've done that, we've checked that off, we've referenced that. Oh, and we're going to move on to the next thing, and then we're going to move on to here. As a movie, like, it worked fine. It was less than 90 minutes, in, out, entertaining. Yeah, good. But the more I think about it, there's just those little bits where it's like, oh, you could have just dug a little bit deeper there. You could have gone a bit harder there. So, what do you know? I suppose if it had been getting a theatrical release, it might have gone harder in those points. But again, I'm kind of struggling to find things I've really disliked here. It was a perfectly fine, middling movie. It's entertaining enough and great to watch at this time of year, which, at the time of recording, is October, Halloween, spooky season, you know? So I'll just jump on a couple of links from this one to other King things. And this is where there might be a very, very tiny spoiler, but I'll remind you of that right when I get to it. Among the cast, there are a couple of people who have been in other King adaptations. Of course, this is based on some pages from a King story. We should mention that. But in this, it's Judd's parents who have both been in other King adaptations. So his mum's played by Samantha Mathis, who was in the 2004 Salem's Lot miniseries, and his dad is brilliantly played by Henry Thomas, who I'd already mentioned, who has also been in Gerald's Game, Doctor Sleep, one episode of Nightmares and Dreamscapes, and the miniseries for Desperation, and he is really good in this. And in terms of a couple of things that happened during the film that are kind of nods to, well, Pet Sematary, let's face it. I didn't spot any 19s, although I might have missed one. But there's a couple of flashes of trucks going past on the road outside Judd's house, which of course is a little nod to what might happen in the future. And now this is the bit that is a potential spoiler, so if you want to skip forward 30 seconds, this is your time to do it. There's a bit where Norma slashes someone across the Achilles, which of course is an iconic scene for Pet Sematary, and I loved seeing that. So as for overall thoughts for this, like I said, I went into this with very low expectations. I deliberately did not watch any trailers. I was kind of interested when it first got announced, but then lost interest the longer it took to actually come out. And by the time it came out last Friday, I was ready to watch it, and then it didn't drop on Paramount Plus in the UK until Saturday. So I kind of lost a bit of energy and enthusiasm about it, but then finally picked it up and watched it. Like I said, going in expecting it to be bad, and came out pleasantly surprised. Like, this is like a 2.5 out of 5 for me. And I will say, I think I like it more than taking the 2019 remake as a whole. I think I liked it more. There are elements of the 2019 remake that I thought was spectacular. I'll cover that in, a couple of years. But just for comparison of what I've seen this year, I liked it more than The Boogeyman, and I certainly liked it more than the new Exorcist film, which I watched at the weekend, and that was only a 1 star for me. So it was perfectly fine, and it's perfectly entertaining, and it's an interesting addition to the lore of this story. That being said, I also think it's time to leave this particular story buried in non-sour ground now. Just put it in a proper cemetery, let it die, and leave it be, because sometimes, well, you know the rest. There we go, there's my spoiler-free review of Pet Sematary Bloodlines, which you can watch now on Paramount Plus. When you do watch it, there's a train going past. Train! When you do watch it, come back, let me know what you think in the comments. And yeah, come back again soon. If you want to find links to all of my things, my fiction, my newsletter, my Stephen King quiz book, podcast, all of that stuff. It's in the description. Come say hi on Letterboxd, come say hi on Instagram where I'm at Dave Musson, and I'll be back again soon. We're back in the 90s. We're covering one of my all-time favourite, so bad it's good movies. Yeah, it's Sleepwalkers up next. So do come back for that because we're going to have a lot of fun. But otherwise, as Jez says at the end, stay the fuck out of Ludlow.